So I went on No Fugazi podcast. He's a man of faith. I am a man of faith also. And I wanted to ask him, where did the first desire of sin came from? So I'm going to let the video play. And during the video, I might give some opinions. And I'm also going to give you my theories. But you will hear my theory within the video. So let's move along. Let's get right into it.
Bring him up now. Let's see. What's going on, man? Welcome to No Fugazi. State your name and where you from.
Hey, how you doing? Captain Full from Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn, okay. Talk to me. What you want to talk about today, man?
Well, it's a theory, but it's got to lead up to it because I'm not sure if it's going to be a debate because I'm on the same program that you're on. You know what I'm saying? God over man, man over woman, and woman over child. So it's actually trying to get some questions, and it might come into a debate. I don't know. I'm not sure. But my thing is, I'm going to pick two letters, C or F, and I'll get to that later on. But
the reason why I picked the letter C and F is because experience and talking to certain people about this situation, about where the first desire of sin came from. And usually it's either the letter C or the letter F, and that's choice and free will. So I already put it in the atmosphere to let you know that at the end of the day, this is one of the things that is going to come up. So let's move along.
I want to know, when they say God is good and they say all the time, what do you mean by that? And I want to know your meaning. And I'm going to explain what you're saying to me so you can understand where I'm coming from with that.
Got you. I want to make sure I understand this. This is a weird question. So you said when they say God is good, what does it mean?
All the time.
Okay, so when they say God is good all the time, what does that mean?
Exactly. In your meaning.
I'm very linear. It means exactly what it means. God is good all the time. So even though we may not perceive things or to be able to, conceptualize, the things that happen in the world, like, okay, there's weather and storms that's, killing people and, babies and things like that. We may be like, well, why would God allow that to happen? You know what I mean? We can say violence, gun violence, and, famine and poor people in other countries and many things. We could see that like, well, if God is always good, why would he allow this to happen? So that's because people have a limited mind of how they think. I look at it like, well, God gave us free will, so things are going to happen, right? With that being said, that's love. So that's good. That's good all the time. God isn't trying to control us or restrain us. You know what I mean? And the reason why God acts in a sense is because we can look at it from anything. Say if you're in a relationship and you're trying to control your girl. Yeah, I don't want you going outside. Women are going to the club. I don't want you doing this. And say she doesn't do it because you're controlling the situation. Not only saying that you don't want her to do it, but you're actually maybe putting locks on the door. You're going to the extremes. Would you really know if that woman truly genuinely loves you? No, you won't know if that woman truly genuinely loves you because you're trying to restrain her. You're trying to control the situation. So you won't know if things are genuine. And that's the same thing with free will. God gives us free will because he loves us. And not only that, he wants to receive love back because that's the only way he can know if it's genuine. Since he gives us free will, we're not robots. So yeah, God is good all the time. I would say that the reason he's good all the time is because he gave us free will.
I agree. And under any circumstances, God is good all the time. I agree with you. Like I said, the letter C and the F, choice or free will, basically. But my thing is that the way I see it, I think we see it the same thing. God is good, so that means anything he creates in goodwill. And not in no other way. His intent is good. He made this world to be good. He made beings to be good. So my question is, where the sin of desire, not on earth, but on heaven, in heaven, how did that create it? How did that happen to Lucifer?
That's a good question. I would say that same thing as it is on heaven, as it is on earth. So as it is on heaven, as it is on earth. So the angels and things had free will too. This is how they were able to sin.
This video, I had to choose. I have free will to pick these shades for this video or these shades. I made a choice because I have free will. I picked these shades. I'm in a car, I drive, the sun gets in my eye. Gotta have shades, you know what I'm saying? But was that a good or evil? So my thing is that having free will and a choice is not defined in good and evil. Now, good and evil is in the category of getting chosen and having free will to choose those things. But when somebody say everything's because of choice and free will, well, I can't say that for the shades that I picked on my head if I just did a good or evil thing. Okay, so let's move on a little bit more. Because this is a good brother. Go subscribe to him. It's called No Fugazi Podcast. And I just want to get his knowledge. And so far, the choice and free will is still going on here. But each one teach one. So let's move on a little bit more.
This is how people on Earth are able to sin. Started with, Eve biting the apple, and then Adam being a simp and following her and biting that apple too. So, yeah, man. To answer that, as it is in heaven, as it is on Earth.
Okay, so the way I see it, God created, well, not Satan, Lucifer at the time.
So as you can see, I changed my mind because I have free will and choice. So now I put up the green, I got the purple. Now, when I say Lucifer or Satan or Shaitan, it's going to come full circle. At the end of the video, I got off because there was other people that, is an open debate on anything, right? So I got off his channel, but a lady came and she has Islam faith and she was talking about Shaitan. And so I'll get to that part later. But I'm going by my fate and his fate. And so we're going by Lucifer, and then he becomes Satan on earth when one third of the angels fall with him. So let's move on.
And if God made Lucifer and his greatest cherub, his angel, in goodwill, what gave Lucifer the desire to be who he is right now?
Free will, choice.
See, that's why I picked the letter C and I picked the letter F, choice or free will. And that's what I get a lot from a lot of people when I ask this question. And I have a choice. Choice is not evil. Choice is like, if I decide to eat an apple instead of an orange, that's a choice. That's not evil or good. Evil and good is within the category of choice. But I don't consider evil and good the definition of choice, where choice could be a definition of anything. So my question is like, what if God made Lucifer in his image, of course, meaning what is his right-hand man's in heaven, one of the beautiful angels, he created something good. What beguiled Lucifer to become against God?
The same thing, man. Choice isn't evil. It's what we choose is evil. So, it's always going to be choice. I would say that, what provoked, Lucifer to be evil, the natural sins that we all have, the natural desires that we all have, pride, jealousy, envy, things like that. That provokes anyone, man.
So God did not create anger, hatred, envy, jealousy, because those are the things that was created in Lucifer. But if God made Lucifer in his greatest image, or something that's great, as one of his greatest cherubs, his angels, something had to beguiled Lucifer before he was, upheld from heaven, fall down to earth, one third of his angels. And then we go so on where he beguiled Eve. And so something had to get a desire. That desire did not come from God if he's good all the time.
Where do you think the desire came from?
Well, the good brother asked me, what is my theory? Before we get into the theory, I want you to hear something. Now, on YouTube, the tool could be used as good or evil. Now, when you ask this question to certain believers, like that has faith like I am, they kind of get irritated when you ask something, when you have to go a little bit far beyond. And I'll give you an explanation for that. And most of the time, it's like blaspheming to them. So I want you, and I don't have the best vocabulary and the best grammar, just being honest with you. But my thoughts, God gave me the gift to explore, just like scientists and doctors and all, and people that can invent, to explore as far as you can. I don't know if you want to blame God for that or blame me for that, for asking these questions. But most times when you ask these questions to believers, they will believe that you're blaspheming. But I found something, because every time I try to go to YouTube, it's always about free will and choice. But then I found something that made a lot of sense to me. And I want to share it with you, because this is about each one teach one. So let's move on real quickly and let's get this in. Yes.
Jonathan Edwards, who claims that, number one, free will is doing what we desire, but that two, God gives us the desire to do good. And with that being said, and keeping James 1:13 in mind, I'm having trouble understanding where Lucifer received his first desire for sin. Norman Geisler says, quote, "The unmistakable logical conclusion for the extreme Calvinist is that both Lucifer and Adam sinned because God gave them the desire to sin first," end quote. I would imagine that Adam received his desire to sin from Eve, who received it from the serpent, from Satan. But if God is sovereign over all things, including all of our desires, would that make him the initial author of the first desire for sin in Satan? How do you answer this mystery?
For as many years as I can remember, I have said that among the mysteries in my theology, for which I do not have an adequate answer, one of them is the question, how? How is key word here. How did the first sin come about? And by first sin, I don't mean Adam's first sin. I mean Satan's first sin, the very first sin in the universe. The Bible opens not with the beginning of evil, but with the presence of unexplained evil. Man is created innocent, and the serpent is already there, deceitful, manifestly opposed to the God of creation. And that's where the Bible begins. And as far as I can see, no explanation is offered in the Bible for how Satan became evil. I know there are hints that he was a perfect angel, created by God. Jude says that he refers to angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, whom God has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. And I don't doubt that Satan was created good and fell from his proper place, like Jude says, because I don't think that evil and God are both eternal and ultimate realities. I'm not a dualist. God and his goodness and wisdom and power are the only ultimate eternal realities. And thus evil is somehow derivative, secondary, without God being a sinner. And all of that, virtually all Christians agree on. But how did Satan become evil? I do not know. And it is plain to me that those who believe in ultimate self-determination of God's creatures, like angels and humans, don't know either. To say that Satan had free will, that is ultimate self-determination, to say that Satan had free will is not an explanation for why he committed his first sin. It's a label. It's a label. It's not an explanation. It's a label of a mystery. How could a perfectly good being with a perfectly good will and a perfectly good heart ever experience any imperfect impulse that would cause the will to move in the direction of sin? And the answer is nobody knows, including those who say, oh, it's free will. That's not an explanation. It's a name for a mystery. So we don't know. The Bible doesn't explain the how of it. So Rob quotes Norman Geisler, who says, the unmistakable logical conclusion for the extreme Calvinist, for both Lucifer and Adam, that they sinned, is because God gave them the desire to sin. Now, I'm not sure whether I qualify for Geisler's extreme Calvinist, but I strongly suspect that I do. But just at this point, I am disagreeing with that description of me, and I am saying, no, I am not driven to say God gave Lucifer his first desire to sin. That is an oversimplification of virtually everybody's viewpoint. I do not know how Lucifer came to feel his first inclination to rebel against God. But here is what I do know. God is indeed sovereign, and nothing comes to pass apart from his plan, which includes things he more or less causes directly and things he more or less permits indirectly. And there is no doubt in my mind that Satan's fall and all of the redemptive plan of God for the glory of his grace afterwards was according to God's eternal plan. But it is precisely at this point that the how of the causality of Satan's first sin worked, we do not know. I have a category in my thinking, in other words, for the fact that God can see to it that something come to pass which he hates. This is what he did, for example, when he planned the crucifixion of Jesus, according to Acts 4:27 and 4:28. The murder of Jesus was sinful, and it was planned down to the detail by God. You can read it in the Psalms, and you can read it in the New Testament. Precisely how God does that, maintaining his sinlessness, and the sin of the things that comes about, and the moral accountability of those who do those sins. The how of that, I do not know. But I think the Bible leads us to believe that he is sovereign over all sin, and that he never sins. That is what I believe the Bible teaches. Now, how he does it, there might be hints in the Bible. And I am going to give you one pointer. And I do not claim this is an explanation, but it's worth thinking about as a pointer toward a possible explanation that maybe we'll understand someday. In Isaiah 63:17, the prophet cries out to the people, "O Lord, why do you make us wander from your ways?" Did you hear that? "Oh Lord, why do you make us wander from your ways and harden our heart so that we fear you not? Return for the sake of your servants, the tribes of your heritage." And so he ascribes to God the ultimate causality, somehow, of our wandering, Israel's wandering into sin. How did God do that? The second half of the verse says, "Return for the sake of your servants," suggesting, pointing that somehow God's absence did it. And then he says in Isaiah 64:7, this is what 7 or 8 verses later, there is no one here who calls upon your name, who rouses himself to take hold of you. For you have hidden your face from us and have made us melt in the hand of our iniquities. And so again, it's the hiding of his face that explains the sin. And I'm not saying this is a foolproof explanation of sin, like somehow God cloaked his glory from Lucifer, and in the cloaking of his glory, somehow, still inexplicable to me, there rises a preference in Lucifer's heart for himself over God, who has cloaked his glory. I don't know how that happens, but this is a pointer that something like that might have been going on. I'm simply saying this is worth pondering, that God may be able to govern the presence and absence of sin, not by direct active agency, but by concealing himself. I think it was Edwards who said, there's a difference between the way light is caused at 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the shining of the sun, and the way the shadows are caused by the blocking of that sun by the tree, though it is the light of the sun that is responsible for both the brightness of the day and the shadows under the tree. But I end where I began. How the very first sin in the universe came about is a mystery to me. I do not know how. What I am taught in the Bible is that God is sovereign over all things, including sin, and he himself is never a sinner.
That's very perceptive. And again, those passages are Isaiah 63, verse 17, and Isaiah 64, verse 7. I'm certainly going to look at those passages more carefully myself. Thank you, Pastor John.
So before I get into my theory, I'm going to put that at the end, right? And I'm also going to have something on YouTube that go against my theory, because I'm searching, right? And one thing I said to this great brother right here, I said, listen, no one has the answer to this question. Some things are meant to be left alone, but it's not left to be a thought in your mind. You can still think it and have a theory, but some things you're not going to get answers to. That's just life, right? But the great brother said he knew. And I'm going to let it play. And then, he asked me what's my theory, but I'm going to cut that part out and put it at the end. And I'm going to let you hear more about the heavens and the earth, and the debate between us. Well, it's becoming a debate because of my theory now. So let's move on.
To answer your question, I would say that it's the way you're viewing it. So you want to think more linear, straightforward than so much, broad, because that'll confuse you. Let's just stick to what we know, what's true. You believe in free will. So if you believe in free will, then you know that there's many things within that can happen. So since God gave us free will, which that's choice, we get to choose right from wrong, good and bad. We get to choose all of these things. Now, let's say before Eve bit the apple and before the world went into a fallen state, right? The first sin happened in heaven, we could say, right?
Facts.
So, yeah, facts. So the first sin happened in heaven. So as it is in heaven, what's up?
And the first war.
Yeah, so as it is in heaven, as it is on earth. So we got to look at it, well, if God made us in his image, he made, the angels and everything else. The difference is that they're spiritual beings, we're more physical beings. So that's a difference. But then you got to look at it if you're a creator. So you want to try to maybe put yourself in the creator standpoint. All men we create. So if I create this computer, I don't know everything about this computer. I'm not bound by the computer. The computer is bound by me because I put the zeros and ones and everything in there. So God isn't bound by time, space, and matter and stuff like that. So at free will, there's many things that can happen. There's many choices that can happen within free will. So Lucifer and all the angels, they disobeyed God. This is why they fell from heaven, right? And they had choice to do that. If there wasn't, the influence is choice.
Well, okay, now
let me make it so it hits home. Influence creates thinking, thinking creates behavior. So the influence, think about free will is something that hovers, right? It's something that hovers around. And then influence can come from how God made us. Think about human beings. We got 5 senses: seeing, touching, hearing, tasting, and smelling. Our 5 senses absorbs things, right? Now we have our human being, our biology. Men, we have testosterone, 17 times more testosterone than women. Women have more estrogen. So we have a biological makeup, and then we have senses that absorbs information, right? So a male, this is why no one is born a certain way. You are only born what God made you. A man is born a man, and a woman is born a woman. Anything else, you've just been influenced by, right? From your 5 senses. right? Now, that's the same thing with the angels and everything, too. God made them angels with whatever senses they got. Who knows? We don't know, right? So they still was absorbing things around them from what they seen, heard, touched, taste, smell, and all of these things, which then influence them. It curves their perception of things. This is why then when it curves your perception, then influence creates thinking. You're not starting to think, then it creates behavior. Now you're going to behave, and you may choose to make the wrong decision. You may choose to do evil. You may choose to do bad. So I think free will is love, and love is choice. Love is we're not bound by control and restrictions and, God trying to, yes, worship me. You can't do nothing else. Then we'll be robots.
Right. So then God made free will. So then within the free will, he made evil. That's how you...
No, God didn't make evil.
Okay, so then
humans and angels, right, made evil. God only made free will, which is the ability to do good or to God made free will, the ability to obey or not obey. So think about it. If it wasn't free will, then you only could obey. But since it's free will, you can obey or you cannot obey. Make sense?
All right, so the characteristics, like, okay, everything that happened in heaven and everything that's going to happen on earth is like a blueprint of what happened in heaven. Lucifer that became Satan begilded Eve and Adam, but that's the key part. He begilded those two beings. What begilded the being of Lucifer? If God is so good, God could create goodwill, but within that goodwill, within that will, that choice, that free choice, there's a choice of good and evil. And my thing is that if God is good all the time, I don't believe that he gives you a choice. Just like the blueprint of Lucifer begilding Adam and Eve. He gave you the slip of tongue and that choice, whether it was he said it, well, your eyes will be open, because remember, there was two trees, the tree of life and the tree of good and evil. So I'm saying, like, if somebody begilded you, is either they have a slip tongue to say, well, your eyes will be open. Well, if your eyes are not open yet, what was the life then when you didn't recognize he was naked? So that's kind of my thing. That's a theory. I mean, the question to this, no one knows. The question is no one, but it's only theories now. That's what
I can say that I know.
So he's saying that he do know, and I'm being honest, and I'm saying we don't have the answers to this. Okay, what begilded Lucifer to become who he is. And I noticed something about people that believe and have faith. See, me personally, I never was born into the church. Okay, wasn't born into the church, but I noticed that when I asked people, I said, let me ask people that's been in the church and has faith, right? And when I ask them this question, they feel like I'm blaspheming and I'm hurting their brains. And they always give me the answer that it is choice and free will. Well, okay, we all born into sin. Hey, that's a fact. And since we born into sin, there's a choice of good and evil. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming to the part where what begilded Lucifer? What if God's greatest creations, okay, on one of the highest levels, top of the top, okay, what begilded him? And now this is where we come in a clash, because you're saying, well, before I get into that, so this is the part I have with the believers. Like I said, I'm not someone that's been brought up in a church, but I'm looking at outside the box, and I'm saying there's atheists out there and there's believers. And I believe in God. I can't see him, but I believe in him. But an atheist does not believe in God at all. So most of the time when you try to get an atheist on board, first thing that believers do, they pick up the good book and they read scriptures and they say, well, this is. And as an atheist, now, I never was an atheist. I just wasn't close to God. And I always believed there was a God, right? So my mind was open to see and hear what this belief of faith was, right? Whether it came to me or I went to it, right? So if an atheist say, I don't believe in God, and a believer in God that's in the church, born in the church, or just been in the church as long, will pick up the good book and say, well, this is what it says in the good book. And I'm going to let you know what an atheist will say. I don't care about that book. I don't care about that book. Who wrote that book? Oh, men that's born into sin? Well, they have the right to alter the change of centuries or decades or whatever, they could change and manipulate the words. And I don't want to believe in that, because that doesn't prove anything, because that's just a book just like any other book that has fairy tales, fiction, or what's this thing? Just anything. Okay, like I said, I don't have the best grammar. But corruption and lies and all this stuff, and this is how atheists feel. So now I have to say, I gotta look and think out the book and say, well, this is why I believe there's a God. And I have to say this to atheists and give them an example, because the examples is in the book. But if he feels like it's a man-made book and he doesn't believe it, I have to look out the box. So if I say, I'm going to give you proof there's a God, and he said, well, prove it to me. Okay, if you Hindu, Muslim, Seventh-day Adventist, Christian, Baptist, whatever you are, and you believe in something that you don't see, a God, right? We didn't huddle up to go against the atheists. We ain't got time to be worrying about the atheist and him not believing in God. He's got to feel that in him, right? So we over here, we didn't huddle up and say, this is what we're going to do. Because I know one thing about your beliefs is that you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe, and we over here, you over there. And at the end of the day, one thing we have in common, regardless if we don't think your religion is right or wrong, one thing we have in common that the atheists don't have in common is that we believe in God, right? So let me give you an example. Before Catholics, Christianity, any of them things, we inherit something that God gave to us. Think about those people in the Amazon jungle that was never introduced to Jesus Christ, Catholic, Christians, Islam, nothing. They believe in a God. Yeah, they believed in something that they couldn't see, whether it was the stars, or they build a statue and they idolize it. This is something that's hereditary that God put in us to believe is something we don't see, or we worship, or we idolize. So that's when I'll come to an atheist and say, hey man, you don't believe in God, but I'm going to give you a reason without picking that book up. And I have other examples that I'm not going to go through, but that's one of the biggest examples that why on this world we are fighting in the name of God and going to war over believing something that we can't see. So that's one thing. That's one of the proofs I'll show to this atheist that don't believe in anything, that you're outnumbered, because right now there's war going on in the name of God. Okay? So we inherited this belief to feel something, that there's something out there that we can't see, but we believe in, right? So I know there's one thing that's true. Let me let you read this real quick. Generation Z has a shorter attention span at 8 seconds, millennials at 12 seconds. Okay, so digital content, Gen Z constantly exposed to digital content and multiple screens. Short form content, the rise of short form content for social media has made people accustomed to receiving information quickly and in an entertaining way. Fast-paced digital world, the fast-paced nature of the digital world has led to a decrease in attention spans. Giving you that fact that the attention span of Gen Z and millennials is very short. I'm going to cut this video and I'm going to do a part 2. And in part 2, remember the clip I showed you with the explanation, each one teach one, and I show you a video about this man explaining, and I'm going to let you know that came from a Christian YouTube channel, okay? Not from nowhere else. And I'll put the link in the description so you could go and listen to the whole thing, which I put all of it there. But anyway, you could go and check out the channel, and this is Christian talk, right? So, it's a short attention span, so I don't want to make this an hour or 45 minutes, 30 minutes tops, right? But you got to understand that there's a war going on out here. There's people that's not believing in God, and it's getting more and more to the point as time gets harder, okay? And to me, like this man said in the YouTube channel that I I give you an explanation, he could say it better than me. But I thought it, because there's no new thought under the sun. I just attached to it, and he could explain it better. That saying that good and evil is just a choice, right? You could choose. That's a fact. We're born into sin. That's a fact. But to me, and just the man in that YouTube clip, he said it's just a label. It's not an explanation. And we're not going to have an explanation. And if we don't have an explanation, that equals out to that equation to say we don't have all the answers. But then when you speak to people, they say, yes, I do have the answers. And it's because of choice or free will. So in part 2, I'm going to put my theology in this situation. I didn't want to put it in this one. I just wanted to go through the point of choice and goodwill and free will. And now that we got that part, right? And I explain it, it's a label to me. It's not an explanation. Now we can move on to part 2, and I will put my theory. Now, remember, in the video with that great brother, his name is Cooley, no Fugazi, there's parts that I clipped out. I didn't clip anything about him. I clipped it out on me because I already gave him my theory, right? But I took that theory out in this video because I believe that in part 2, I couldn't get it all in one video. I'd rather get it in 2 videos. So in the beginning of next video, of the next part 2, I'm going to put that same YouTube clip of that man saying free will and choice is a label. It's not an explanation why Lucifer became who he was. All right. So like I always say in my videos on my other channel, or if I decide to make a new channel, I'm still trying to figure it out. But if I decide in the future that I make a new channel, what I used to say in my old channel, I used to talk about boxing. And if I'm still here on boxing channel, you can see that I'm trying to make a new channel, right? But I'll say, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here for you to read between the lines. It's not what they say, it's what they're not saying. I mix the lies with the truth and the truth with the lies. But at the end of the day, human nature love lies and they hate the truth. 1.